They are Dr. Martin Kulldorff from Harvard, Dr. Sunetra Gupta from the University of Oxford, and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford. I am delighted that the three of them join me now from Great Barrington, Massachusetts, where they've been meeting all weekend. So perhaps if we just start with you, Dr. Kulldorff, what are you doing and why are you there?
Well, thank you for having us. One of the basic principles of public health is that you cannot look only at one disease. You have to look at public health very broadly. And the strategy we have used for COVID-19 has not been good for COVID-19, but it's also generated enormous collateral damage on other public health. Less plummeting vaccination rates, less cancer screening, worse outcomes from cardiovascular diseases and mental health problems, and so on. So we think it's important to present an alternative way to approach COVID-19. And this is nothing revolutionary, because this is things that people have been saying since the very beginning back in March, but it's often been dismissed. So we were thinking, coming together, three scientists from reasonably respectable universities to sign a declaration urging the world to look into a different approach might have a good effect, where we do a better job protecting older people and other high-risk groups, while we let children and younger adults live their lives normally, going to in-person schools and universities, etc.
Dr. Gupta just mentioned herd immunity. She came right out with it. That's the phrase that people are very anxious to avoid using. I mean, even the Swedes say that that's not their strategy, that just is a possible byproduct. Are you advocating a herd immunity strategy?
So herd immunity is not a strategy. Herd immunity is a fact. Herd immunity is not a strategy. Herd immunity is a fact about most infectious diseases, the course that they spread through the population. Even if we were to have an effective vaccine, we would be relying on herd immunity as the endpoint of this infectious disease epidemic. So it's less of a strategy than a recognition of a biological fact. Our aim is not to say we should just do nothing. In fact, that's, I think, the misconception that people have when they hear the words herd immunity strategy. In fact, it's quite the opposite. As both Dr. Kulldorff and Dr. Gupta have emphasized, our strategy involves protecting the vulnerable. Now, how do we know about that? We've learned a lot about this disease in the 8 months that we've had to live with it. In particular, we've learned what groups are most vulnerable should they become infected for mortality and other severe bad outcomes. We also learned about groups that are relatively well protected, even should they become infected. Children, for instance, in the United States, more children have died this year from the seasonal flu than have died from COVID-19. Children, and thank God, are relatively protected from COVID-19 infection should they become infected than an older adult, 65 or 70 or higher, who really are in a vulnerable position. Our strategy takes advantage of that that knowledge we've gained about this and proposes concrete ways of addressing the needs of the vulnerable so that they don't become infected, so they don't die from the disease, while at the same time, the people who are suffering from the collateral damage of the lockdown, closed schools, closed businesses, closed universities, depression, suicidal ideation, all that enormous collateral damage when they face very little risk from death from the disease, that has to end. So the premise is not to do something reckless. The premise is to take account, as Dr. Kulldorff said, of all of public health, all of the harms. We care about cancer. We care about mental illness. We care about all these things. We are not simply just bags of germs infecting one another. We're human beings. We are not simply just bags of germs infecting one another. We're human beings. We are not simply just bags of germs infecting one another. We're human beings. And we want to take advantage of the new knowledge we've gained, protect the vulnerable, and let people face the risk of the disease who don't actually face a very large risk of mortality if they were to become infected.
Response to this has been very myopic, I suppose. I mean, or blinkered. We've been looking down a single axis on this. And that's been my problem right from the outset, is that we surely right from the outset should have started thinking about all the damage that could be done and would be done if we simply went about following this single goal of getting rid of or suppressing this virus.
We've become obsessed with one metric, perhaps.
One metric, one kind of message, one kind of goal, and the language that surrounds it is very sort of bellicose and very directed at the achievement of that goal. And somehow it's sucked everyone in, and it's created this space, a space from which one can, virtue signal madly. If this only gets people to sit up and look around and say, oh my God, 130 million people are going to starve to death as a result of this. Just that one thought I'd like people to keep in their heads.
But there's one data point I can bring forward to show how poorly we've reacted to the virus and how we violated standard public health thinking. We are now at a point where we think about people who get the virus as if they're at fault. We've stigmatized people who have the disease. I mean, I'd hope we'd learned our lesson from the HIV epidemic to not do that. And yet the public health messaging has effectively reinforced that. We have to change that.